Howdy, all of you delicious people! I am here today to review Seems Like Old Times. Today's sponsor is to be the dinner of which that I ate several hours ago. Also, how old are we talking about here? Like, are we talking about yesterday? I can go on, reflect on the movies that I had gone on and seen and tried to review at some point. Reflecting on that. But so Seems Like Old Times is a movie that I had gone on and watched in my past, but in all honesty, when going back into this today, like, I was so blown away by it. I was like, man, like, I knew this movie was good, but not this freaking good. We'd have a number of just cast members that are just all hitting their stride, and it could all just be writing, but then again, like, everything that everyone is delivering is just like to the T perfect. And so, like, everything is to like kind of play out just so, like, man, like, they picked like every single one of these characters and actors and like, this was the perfect film in a lot of ways. Maybe not the number one film in my entire brain, but dang, is it pretty close up there. Um, this movie is freaking epic. Just for how, like, you could probably say that, like, what they're doing in this movie is very simple, but, like, it's simple, but then, like, it's smothered in jokes. It's smothered in the laughs. It's smothered in good times. And really, like, I could not go on and praise this movie more so than that because I just don't have the old times to do so. A second ago was the old times. So, yeah, I really enjoy this movie. And good, because I really needed something again to just, like, get me in a good space, a good spot, and a good reflection of something that was to go on and be way more better than I remember it being. And so that was just fun. That was great. So, what is this movie about? Because you may want to go on and check it out if it seems convenient for you through the apps of which that I am going to go on and list beyond the ones that are probably through a Google search. So, dare in fact, I'll go on and tell you through a Google Play Store. Hopefully, you'll be able to find these apps called Zelifonic, Zelivonic, Manic, Minnic. Movie Box might be on the Google Play Store, not quite sure. And also, there is to, of course, be through a Google search, you can download an APK of HDO Box. But anyways, what is this movie about? As I've gone on and just kind of not quite gotten to that point yet. Nicholas is to be a character that is to just kind of be in this cabined location upon his own, to come to find out that he is to turn around and be forced into a bank robbery. And this character is to, of course, be the only person to have been really spotted for this bank robbery besides the two men that are to have been with him. So Nicholas's character, Chevy Chase, is to really just be manhunted for. And Nicholas seems to not really have anybody to really turn to but his former lover, Glenda. Glenda, of course, who is to be happily married with Ira. Which, more than likely, I'm to really just know him from the Beethoven movies. And funny enough, like, one of the dogs from this movie looks like the Beethoven dog. The Beethoven dog. So, weirdly enough. But yeah, like Gwenda like has like 6 dogs in this film, and Gwenda later makes the joke that she's like, "Well, yeah, I'm gonna soon get 6 more," and Aurora is just like, "Oh my god." So Nick goes on to try and seek refuge with Glenda, but then also is to try and re-spark some of their former love. And Glenda is consistently trying to tell Nick, it's like, hey, we lost that love and feeling a long time ago, and we're not gonna get it back. And the more and more that Nick is going to try to convince Glenda, it's like, well, what if I changed? What if I tried? Glenda is just like, no, like I'm with Ira now. I'm the happiest I've ever been, and like, no. So we go through this journey of Ira, who is trying to go on and become this kind of higher up political official, going through a campaign of sorts. And so all this movie is to eventually go from these court cases that Glenda is to be involved in, and Ira eventually continuous talks with the governor to try and make the best chicken pepperoni he can go on and make, because we'd come to find that the only person, Aurora, who had made chicken pepperoni in prior, is to go on and get her feet scraped. So, again, everybody is just working like a well-oiled machine in this film. It's amazing. And if you have not gone on and ever seen Seems Like Old Times, you're missing out. You really are. And for those of you that even have gone on and seen this movie, again, like maybe recheck it out somehow, or ways in which that I've gone on and already stated within the early parts of this review. Because man, this movie's epic. It's great. Ah, uh, thank goodness I remember this movie. Um, from seeing it in the past, because I was starting to thumb through some like Chevy Chase films, because I really eventually wanted to go into some Chevy Chase films, because it's been so long since like seeing like Fletch and Christmas Vacations and stuff along those lines. And at some point, I was gonna kind of comb through some Chevy Chase stuff, like Modern Problems or something like that, and a number of other things. There's probably a number of other like billions of Chevy Chase films that I'm very much to be at some point interested in. List your favorite in the comments below if that's what you want to go on and do. But yeah, so really, I think I just want to push on and get to spoilers, because I've kind of gone in and kind of said my piece about this movie. It's freaking great, if not epic. Um, I don't know if I would want to go on and put it within the top 5 movies, but it may go on and go like somewhere in the top maybe 10, 15, somewhere in there. I don't know. There are so many movies that I've ever gone and seen, but this movie just has like, comedy wise, like this is like top 5. Like if I'm gonna put a movie in a comedy genre, this is to be top 5 comedy films. But anyways, so I think it's about that time to just push on into spoilers. Let me know in the comments below how you are to have gone on and thoughts about this film, if you were to have gone on and checked it out or remembered it in your past, or really just want to go on and rather see foul play because you never saw that movie. Neither did I. But justifiably enough, while going through Google, I found it and I was like, what the heck is this? Never seen this. So, with that said, I'm going to go on and pause this here and get into my cast list. And so, really, I also want to say thank you to everybody for going on and watching this review and possibly uh, being involved in whichever way that you would like to be involved with in this channel. If it's just a simply view, then thank you. If it's to be a subscriber and you've been involved in it, thank you. I really do appreciate it. I really do. So, with that said, I think it's that customary time yet again. Not old times, but it is spoil time. Spoil time, it's about that time again to spoil this movie. And let's pause this review. Alright. Like, I feel that I should go into, like, every single review and have some kind of, like, inside or behind the scenes things going on for every single, like, thing that I'm to go on and do, and I feel, like, amiss if I don't go on and state something. But the only thing that I have is just kind of generically, like, just in general Chevy Chase stuff. Like, at one point, it came to find that there was to be like a fight between both Chevy Chase and Bill Murray at one point, and I'm assuming the SNL time period. And Joel McHale had gone on the Michael Rosenbaum YouTube channel Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, and Joel McHale had talked about how like difficult Chevy Chase was. I'd say difficult, but that's probably not the exact words that he used to use. But like Joe McHale ended up stating like how like he is to like write out exactly like how to fight Chevy Chase. So I'm like, holy crap, all right, like wow. But then again, like could you really be surprised by eventually the stuff that comes out about these massive stars of their of of whatever era um and whatever still to this day they're to be just kind of held um up by their library of films and projects and shows and whatever. But anyways, let's get into the spoilers of this film. So we open up this movie with making our way into this kind of probably like crane camera shot, it seems, with showcasing Nicholas, Chevy Chase's character, who's just kind of typing away at this cabin. And so he goes inside to, I think, get a bag of pretzels. And he all of a sudden is to get kind of a knock at this door. And we'd have these two characters, uh, BG and Dex. Really, I don't feel that I need to like specifically like know which ones are which ones. Because really, I feel oftentimes like these characters are just kind of interchangeable. But anyways, Nicholas, of course, tries to like talk to these men, and they're to state it's like, well, hey, like my car broke down, like, can you kind of help me out? And Nicholas is just like, well, like, I don't really have a phone. It's like, well, yeah, we don't really have a car, and so one of the guys goes and whips out the gun. It's like, well, hey, like you're gonna drive us to where we need to go. So Nicholas tries to close the door on them, but like he ends up getting overpowered. So Nicholas is just forced to kind of do what they say, even though like the guys are even kind of impressed with Nicholas. Is like, well, wait a minute, like you really tried to just kind of fight for your life here. And Nicholas is like, well, it's like the fight or flight response. Like, come on. So like that's always who he's always ever been. So they get in the car, and the funny thing right away is we had, I think, BG, who's in the back, and he consistently calls Nick an a-hole, and Nick turns Nick turns to BG. It's like, well, yeah, my name is Nick. You can call me Nick. And it's like, no, I'm just gonna keep on calling you a-hole. So we have Dex that goes on to explain what they're gonna go on and do, and how they're gonna do it, and how he's written out this note, and how Nicholas is going to is gonna be kind of operating within this bank, and where the two other guys are going to be. So Nicholas at least follows through to make it to the bank teller, hands her this note, but then doesn't even know what at all is even on the note. Because I guess it just kind of quickly just whew, over his head. So Nicholas is consistently trying to talk to the bank teller and convince her. He's like, well, hey, like I'm not really part of this. Like these two other guys are forcing me to do this. Like, please, when you go on, and you call the cops. Please tell them that I told you this. So Nicholas hands over the note to this bank teller. The bank teller is freaking out. And she's like, well, what do I do? And so Nicholas is like, well, I don't even know. Like, read that note. So she reads the note, and all of a sudden, there's another person that is to be lined up behind Nicholas. And Nicholas is just like, well, like, could you go to another line? Like, I'm kind of getting a real cash out here. So Nicholas gets the money from the teller, and then like turns around and is like smacking uh through all of these little ropes that you're honestly supposed to like walk around from. If you ever to go into a bank, at certain portions they have those kind of just weird pole rope things. Probably you would also see that at an airport, but I digress here. I'm going too thoroughly into explaining the decorations upon a bank. But so Nick goes on to smack dab right in uh, the perfect angle and lighting and everything to be right face forward at this camera. He looks directly at it. Nicholas is like, oh crap. While the two other guys are kind of wearing these hats and are going on and just kind of not looking at all at the cameras. So we then turn around and have Nicholas, who had also gone to the gas station, and Nicholas is trying to go on and get the attention of the gas station attendant. He's kind of like grabbing him, and he's kind of like winking at him, and it's kind of funny, like when they're just kind of talking, like the gas station attendant is asking, like the guy's like, well, hey, where are you guys going? And we'd have Nicholas who's like, well, Carmel. And the other guy is like, Oregon. It's like, they're saying like everything the exact opposite. And like, wouldn't that just kind of like tip it to the gas station attendant just a little bit, that like this seems very unusual, that it seems that both of them are kind of getting the wrong bit of information, but like we keep going with it anyways. So Nicholas is in the passenger seat as the guys are to be taking over on the driving. And so Nicholas is to turn to the guys in his estate that is like, hey guys, like I've decided I've wanted out of our little gang here. Like you guys can take my share. And like he wasn't a part of it. He was just like held to gunpoint. And so like really he was like really just now just be like, okay, like since you guys got your money, like I want like my safety. Like, I want to be able to like have you guys like continue to not need me because at some point you're just gonna put a gun to my head. Nicholas, it seemed, also had a gun as well, but it had no bullets. And at some point, Nicholas will still use the gun to intimidate people, but it'll be pointless because he'll even tell whoever it is he's pointing the gun to that it doesn't have bullets at some points. So Nicholas is to really just beg and plead to get out of this car, and he really is to just kind of be forced out of it. He's to kind of duck and roll, and at some point goes on and injures his leg or hurts his leg. So now we go on and we have Fred making his way into Ira's office. And we have the whole kind of bold lettering of who Ira is and titles and such. So Fred goes on and is overhearing the conversation of Ira, and Ira's going on and talking to the governor and talking about the candidacy of it all and this and that. And so Ira's like, well, okay, governor, like I'll go on and like I'll make a whole meal out of this. Yeah, I know you love the chicken pepperoni in the past, so I'm gonna try and see if Aurora is gonna cook that for you. So Fred goes on to explain to Ira about Nicholas's case, and here's where we start to get backstory of Nicholas's character, where they go on to start talking about how Nicholas in Mexico had been involved in a kind of drug bust, and really he was again kind of the middleman. Like Nicholas goes on and explains that he had gone on and kind of tipped these guys $100 to kind of see how their network was to get run, and he ended up just kind of being forced to kind of just hold this bag of cocaine, and so yeah, so that's why he ended up getting busted in his past. So yeah, so like Nicholas is just a writer that is to try and get implemented in these things that eventually just kind of blow up in his face quite often. So we'd have Glenda, who's played by Goldie Hawn here. If I didn't mention also, we'd have Ira Parks, who's played by Charles Grodin, who I would remember, of course, from the Beethoven movies. As well as I think there was like him in a Martin short film um, that also is to be it has its niceties. Um, it has some good things about it. Um, but then it also reminds me of the God, what the God, what is the guy's name? It reminds me of that one kid movie with Gilbert Godfrey. Like I don't know, I can't think of it. I'll have to kind of go on and move on here. But so Glenda is going on and being at a court hearing for these two Native American men, both Thomas and Robert. So we'd end up just having these two men eventually just kind of needing employment, and so Glenda is to go on and just be like, well, I think I can come up with you guys kind of working at these stables. And both Thomas and Robert are just like, well, I don't know, like I don't think I have the skill set to do that kind of job. And So Glenda's like, well, we'll think of something. So Glenda then goes on to meet up with Chester, her kind of chauffeur, and immediately she's like, well, hey, where'd you get that like chauffeur hat from? He's like, well, I got it from a chauffeur. And Glenda's like, what do you mean by that? Basically stating that he pretty much just kind of stole this hat. And Glenda's like, well, hey, like, I don't want you to, like, get right back and turn around and get into court again. And so I was like, oh, no, it's fine. So they drive off, and Chester is asking Glenda for a raise. And Glenda's like, well, I can't even afford you now. Like, I got several people working under me. So Glenda now makes her way through the house, uh, is is chatting it up with Aurora, as well as also the dogs are getting very just chatty. So Iroh's to make his way home is talking with Glenn, and he's like, I need some time away to speak with you in private. Like the dogs are going off, like uh everybody's just kind of scattered around the house. Like I want to kind of take you off to the side and just kind of have a moment here. So Glenn and Ira go outside. Glenda is starting to notice that her corn isn't doing that well because of rabbits. And Ira is like, Glenda, I need to tell you something. So I was like, oh, okay. So Glenda's like, okay, like, what do you need to tell me? So Ira goes on and states that he's in the running for this candidacy, and it's like, oh wow, great, this is awesome. And then also, Ira is to break the news to Glenda about her past lover, who is soon to be going in the slammer. And Glenda is like, well, I'm probably gonna end up representing him because she'll just represent anybody, it seems. So I'm wondering if she's doing this pro bono or if she actually legitimately gets paid. I'm not quite sure. But so we transition to have Nicholas. Nicholas is to make his way to this gas station and is in desperation to just have a candy bar because he hasn't eaten in hours. And Nick goes on and is to put this coin into this vending machine, and the vending machine is not working. He's going on and like kicking it and wanting to put like this gun to it, and he's just like, ugh, like what can I do? So the gas station attendant makes his way to the vending machine, and Nicholas is to kind of turn to this gas station attendant, have this gun in the palm of his hand. Is to not be out like this, is to be out like this. And he has the gun like right in his palm. So the gas station attendant is like, whoa, buddy. And so Nick is like, I just want a candy bar. Like I'm so freaking hungry at this point. Like just give me this candy bar. And so the attendant goes with this crowbar and pops it open, and all of this candy bar things are just flying out. And so I'm like, wait a minute, like Nicholas goes on and like hits every button and none of it works, but then all of a sudden when we'd open this vending machine, we'd realize that all of this candy is just it's all going out. So the gas station attendant is telling Nick like all the candy bars that they have, and he's like, "Oh, okay, give me that one." So he starts eating the handful of candy bars that he's given, and he's like, "Oh, it's stale." It's like beggars can't be choosers, man. It's freaking food. So Nicholas just kind of walks off. So we'd come to this this kind of this party, And so Chester, who is to have been the valet or the chauffeur, is to turn around and also be serving food at this get together, this party. And Glenda is to notice that Chester is basically eating much more than he's handing out to other people. And Chester's like, well, hey, I'm doing two jobs. I was doing the chauffeur thing before. Now I'm the server. And it seems that Chester is to be the only one really serving food, even though there's other people like Thomas and Robert who are to also be involved in the work here, but they're not really doing anything. As well as also it seems that again, like Glenda is to have also hired, it seemed like four other people, but what are they really doing? So 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 after going and having Glenda talk to Chester, she makes her way to Aurora. Come to find out, one of the dogs is missing. After Glenda is to find out, while being with Aurora, that one of the dogs attacked one of the uh, one of the people at this party because they had accidentally opened the door, maybe looking for the bathroom, and Glenda went to talk to Robert, and Robert is just like, well, uh, like no, like I didn't see where the dog went and this and that. So we'd have Glenda who turns to Aurora, and she doesn't know where the dog is either. So Glenda makes her way outside and is calling for Polonius. I don't know why there has to be a weird, obscure name like that. So Glenda makes her way outside to find these two cops are to be present for this party. So Glenda starts talking to them. It's like, well, hey, like, why are you guys here? And so it's like, well, like, we just want to make sure that this party is off without a hitch. And like, Glenda was thinking, it's like, oh, like, were we too loud, officers? And the cops are like, oh, no, 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 like, we're just kind of like being nice and just kind of patrolling the party. So Glenda goes on and is to make her way to having Nick grab her and holding on to her and kind of holding her mouth. So Nick goes on and is immediately telling Glenda, it's like, well, hey, uh, like if you want to tell me yes, like do this. If you want to tell me no, do this. And so Nicholas is also saying, it's like, well, whatever you do, don't bite me. And all of a sudden she's starting to bite him. And so that separates the two of them. So Glenda, of course, realizing what Nick has gone through, and really also just like it's been such a long time since seeing Nick, and she doesn't know like who he is now. So they're talking things over, and more Nicholas is just like desperately asking Glenda for like, hey, can you get me some food? Like I desperately need some kind of food. Like all I've had is just some candy bars and some of your oil. Like I just need something. So Glenda is like, okay, like I'll get you something. Like I'll find something for you to get here. So Well, Nick, while Glenda is almost starting to leave this garage which that the both of them are in, we'd have Nick going on and again, like consistently throughout this film, talking to Glenda and is to just be like, well, hey, uh, like you're pretty or you're this or you're that or like, like, hey, you want to give this one more shot and like he's consistently kind of like trying to get this girl's attention, trying to lock lips with her, and so Nick is to try to assess here whether they are to still have that old spark, and Glenda is like, well, hey, no, like that battery's been dead for a long time now, and Glenda walks off. So Nick is in the garage sitting in this car and realizes that Robert and this girl are making their way into this garage to start to make out in this car. And consistently, this girl is talking in Espanol, and we'd have Thomas who is consistently just saying like no, that's okay, no, that's okay, and she ends up stating like, well, like, do you even speak Spanish? And he's like, no, that's okay. Funny thing of it is, though, in Spanish, even no means no. So technically, he did say something in Spanish. Yeah, so close enough. So Chester is, or Chester, Ira is starting to like look for Glenda. So Ira goes on and is to kind of check with Chester as Chester's to have a mouthful of food. As Glenda had gone on and asked Chester to whistle before, like Ira is just consistently trying to look at Chester as Chester is to have his back turned to Ira and ask about Glenda. So Ira realizes like okay, like Chester doesn't know, and so he retreats to speak with Aurora and ask the same similar thing. So at some point we'd have Glenda that makes her way back into the kitchen to speak with Aurora and get this chicken. Aurora, it seems, is to have wanted to go on and have that chicken herself, but Glenda is just like, well, like I'm just gonna get this chicken and this beer. So Glenda makes her way outside, thinking that she can give this food all to Nick. But all of a sudden, these cops are to come in and just be like, yoink! Like, oh yeah, thanks. Thanks, Glenda, for this food. Like, yeah, this is great. And Glenda's like, yeah, that's not what I wanted to give it to. So we'd have Glenda that is to make her way back into the garage to then realize that like the two people are within this car. So Glenda ends up getting the two people out of the car and then is to realize that Nicholas is to be underneath this car and is having to be forced to just kind of drag himself out of it. So Glenda has to go in and explain to Nicholas the lack of food that he is to go in and obtain. And so Nick is like, well, yeah, that's fine, but like, just give me some food eventually. And Glenda's like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna try to figure out a way to get food to you. So Nicholas ends up smearing some smoot on Glenda, and so when Glenda returns to the party, she is to have this just kind of black crease upon her face. So Ira ends up looking at Glenda. It's like, well, hey, you have this black smear, and wipes it off with a towelette. So Glenda ends up mentioning that it's some barbecue sauce, and it's a Mexican barbecue sauce, and it's too spicy, and this and that, and that Ira shouldn't try it. And Ira's like, well, I wasn't going to. So after the party is all done and over with, we then retreat to have Ira and Glenda, who are both in bed. It's bed, it's 2 in the morning, 2 a.m., roughly. I think it's probably 2 a.m., 2:08, something like that. I don't remember exactly. But Glenda starts trying to, as much as possible, get out of bed, but Ira is still just kind of like, kind of grasping his hand over Ira, or over Glenda. And when Glenda is to remove the hand, Ira comes right back with the hand, and then Glenda further tries to get out, and so Ira is to just kind of be awakened and asking Glenda, it's like, well, hey, like, what are you doing? Glenda's like, you know what, I just can't sleep. I think I'm gonna go to the garden and like try and uh, figure out something. And then she mentions like, well, yeah, I probably should go out there anyways because that's probably when the rabbits come. And Ira's just like, oh, okay, it sounds like a good enough excuse. Huh? So by the time Glenda is to try and make her way to Nicholas, she finds Nicholas in the kitchen, just kind of grabbing whatever he can. Like these ribs, it seems. He's also going and grabbing this bowl of fruit and just chicken. And so both Glenda and Nicholas are talking, and here's where like Nicholas is to have gone on and really just explained here, as Glenda is to accuse Nicholas of robbing this bank. It's like, well, yeah, I did rob this bank, but I didn't enjoy it. and and so he goes on and he tries to explain it, but then I don't think fully goes 100% into it. But Nicholas is to just kind of be hopping around, and Glenn is like, well, yeah, we should really get you to a doctor. So Nicholas is to go on and just kind of spot like how sad the dogs are, and Glenn is to also mention how like the dogs, it seems, are to have missed Nicholas. So we have Nicholas that goes on and is to be outside, and he trips and falls, and he has his hose just kind of wrapped all over him. And so now both Glenda and Nicholas are just kind of unwrapping this hose around Nicholas, and then continuing to make their way to this guest house. So really, like, yeah, there's a lot of good jokes that are to be had here that are to be probably quickly lost by me now. Like, there was the one point where Nicholas is eating this chicken, and he's like, well, hey, like, if this doesn't turn you on, just kind of look away. So so after Glenda is to go on and deal with supposedly chasing the rabbits for 3 blocks, making her way back to Ira's bedside, Ira is to state that he is to possibly need that guest house for his campaign in the morning. And Glenda just kind of thinks nothing of it because she's so exhausted. She's just so tired with all the the stuff that she's dealing with. So the very next morning, Glenda is to be wakening far too late, and we'd have Glenda who is to rush out to realize that Ira is to go into the guest place. It seems that Nicholas is to have gone on and tried to shave, and then realize that someone is coming into the guest house. So he hides underneath the bed. So Ira starts to make his way sweeping through this location, and Glenda like rushes into the guest room and is kind of stating to Ira, it's like, well, hey, like, uh, what are you doing? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm just kind of cleaning and just kind of like figuring out like this whole location. So Glenda and Ira like are starting to talk, and we'd have Glenda that is to go on and need to mention to Ira about Nicholas and how Glenda did speak with Nicholas, and that at some point Ira needs to go on and be Ira and not a DA. And Ira's like, well, yeah, I'm coming to you as Ira. Like, I'm not coming to you as a DA. Like, just kind of tell me, like, what Nicholas told you. So, Glenda is trying to pitch to Ira that, like, hey, like, how about we go on and have him, like, in our custody and just kind of do some investigation to just kind of, like, see what comes out of all this. And Iris is like, well, no, like, I'm gonna arrest him. Like, obviously, I'm gonna arrest him. So Glenda is just like, well, okay, all right, well, like I guess that's just something that they could not like definitively come together on. So Ira leaves and Nicholas slides out after going on and being underneath this bed where Ira is consistently sitting on the bed. Ira and both Glenda are sitting on the bed. Nicholas at one point is to be consistently having the dog go in and out from underneath this bed, and Nicholas is to be handing the dog to Glenda, but then the dog is to go back onto the ground and just kind of circle around. So Nicholas at one point is just kind of holding the dog, and then Nicholas ends up having Ira really be like just really sitting on the bed, and so Nicholas is just desperately just kind of finger and just wanting to just bash uh, Ira's foot with really how he is to accidentally be stepping on Nicholas's finger, his pinky. So after that, Aurora is going on and wanting to talk to Glenda because it seems that there is to be yet another missing dog or runaway dog. So Aurora ends up asking Glenda, it's like, well, hey, do you want anything for breakfast? And Glenda ends up saying no. But then Nicholas is to want breakfast, so Glenda is just kind of repeating everything that Nicholas is just stating what he wants for breakfast. And he ends up saying thank you at the end of it. Like, thank you, thank you. So here's where we start to get some just kind of interesting dialogue between the two, Nicholas and Glenda, where Nicholas kind of actually mentions the title of this movie in their dialogue, where it's like, yeah, like being with you more and more just kind of seems like old times. Like, when you make love, do you call out my name? And Ira grinds his teeth, and so while Ira, or so Glenda leaves is to meet up with Ira, as Ira is to now have to go on and have a taxi, because we come to find out that Thomas and Robert, the Native American guys who had worked with him the night before, had taken Ira's car, and now Ira is to be left taking a taxi. And so Ira is to state, it's like, well, yeah, like now I think we need to go on and just buy another car for us and then them. So Aurora is to make her way outside to realize that there is to be this man kind of walking about by the guest home. And so Aurora goes on and is to be talking to Glenda. It's like, well, hey, I see a burglar. I see a burglar. I knew uh, that at some point this is going to happen with how uh, the lifestyles of which that these characters are to go on and lead. So Glenda is to figure out that this is to be Nicholas, and Glenda tells Aurora, it's like, oh no no, that was to be like the decorator that was to have for Ira, as Ira it seems is wanting to go on and put this whole kind of campaign guest room together. So Glenda makes her way to to Chester and in the car. Glenda ends up finding out that Nicholas is actually in the back seat, so she tosses him the food, and so Nicholas just starts driving, or Nicholas or Chester starts driving here, and so Nicholas is in the back seat and he's not saying anything. So Chester goes on and runs this red light. The cops pull him over, and while the cop and Chester are talking, we'd of course have the cop notice the guy in the back seat. And Ira had no whereabouts of this Nicholas character, so like he's kind of playing this honest, but Glenda is just like, well, yeah, like this guy was to have gotten hit, and so I decided to just kind of put him in the back of my car. And the cop in Sebastian Chester is like, well, is this true, sir? And Chester's like, well, I had no idea any of this was really going on. So the cop is to ask Nicholas what his name is, and he makes up some fabricated name. So the cop is just like, well, okay, all right, like, well, like, since Glenda, like, you're this kind of just important person, like, I'm gonna go on and kind of like, can I have you kind of follow us? So Nicholas ends up commandeering uh Chester's car by gunpoint. So Ira returns to Fred and is to now talk about the two cars that are now stolen. So Glenda goes on to be at her cases because she has two of them, and come to find out that the cases that she's to be involved in are also to be the people that work with her. So Glenda ends up going through this court case, and so the judge ends up stating, uh, Judge John Channing, it's like, well, hey, like, you know what, like, my son needs work in the summer. And Glenn is like, well, yeah, like, if he needs a lawyer, then by all means, call me. So, we then have Ira who makes his way home uh, much later on to come to find Glenda is there. And it's just kind of black, nighty, just being like, yeah, like, I'm ready for some loving. So, Ira and Glenda are to start to talk here, and it seems that the more that they talk about Nicholas, the more that Glenda is to start to get very much like upset to the point of her like hyperventilating and her getting very ill. So, and Glenda is also just being very honest about where exactly Nicholas was by stating that he was in the guest house earlier on in the day and he was underneath the bed. And like it gets to a point where Ira is just like, well, is he under our bed now? Like, should I look? Should I look more than once? So, uh, Ira is just so upset at this point that he's like, you know what? Like, how about like we're obviously like a relationship is just strained here, and I feel that I need to go in and I need to book it to the guest house. So he goes there, and then Ira goes on to call Glenda. He's like, you know what, I just can't sleep. Like, how about we just go on and just open up a bottle of champagne and like you meet me here. You meet me in the guest house. So Glenda goes on and does so, and so the two of them are canoodling in this bed, and by how small the bed is, Glenda accidentally falls out of the bed, clunk, and she realizes that Nicholas is underneath the bed, and Nicholas is again just like, hey, how's it going? So Glenda is starting to hyperventilate again. Glenda is starting to uh like realize like, oh my god, like I'm going to want to be passionate with my husband while Nicholas is like right there to hear and and somewhere or another just kind of witness this all, either by hearing or maybe he's going to be poking his head out to just get a good shot of the action. So Ira starts talking to Glenda about this story of their past and how she was at one point like kind of declothed, and Glenda's like, I don't want to talk about that story, and Ira's like, oh no, it was a good story and this, and so Glenda's like, no, 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 like, I don't know. So the more and more the two of them are talking, Glenda bursts into tears, fakingly, of course, and like Ira is talking to Glenda. It's like, well, is all of this just because of Nicholas? And so Glenda is like, yeah, it is. So Ira's just like, you know what? Like, I've had it. Like, I'm freaking had it. Like, you can't say in our wedding vows, like, I do to me, and I did to him. Like, you can't go on and look back and you can't have your cake and eat it too kind of situation. So here's the hilarious thing. So Ira goes on and he's consistently just opening this door, and he's consistently talking to Glenda, and like it feels like he's just kind of working out something here. And Glenda is consistently trying to cover up Nicholas, and then like the door keeps opening and she kind of keeps covering up Nicholas. So Ira then finally leaves, and so Nicholas finally makes his way out of this bed. So Ira goes on to uh to eventually notice that his car is getting stolen, and it's not by uh it's not by Nicholas, because Nicholas of course is in that other place. So Ira, I believe, ends up calling the cops on these guys. So we'd finally get to a uh, kind of another just argument between both Ira and Glenda, and we just have the frustration of like them pointing down and being curious and just kind of baffled about this whole situation. And Glenda is to finally just like get to a goofy part of like, well, yeah, fine, I'll confess. I'll confess to you, Ira. Me and Nick have been planning all along to just be together, but still eventually figure out a way to somehow to have had me be with you, and like we've been orchestrating this for I don't know how many years, like, and just doing this goofy confession that makes no rational real sense. But like that is kind of where this couple is to be, to just kind of be exploring the idiotic at this point, just because of how much uncertainty it seems to be between the two of them. So both Ira and both Glenda are frustrated about Nick, both one and the same. And we'd have Glenda who even makes this like needing garlic and crosses uh, to have it to be forced to like have Nicholas kind of be uh, at a pace away. It seems as if he's some vampire. So we'd have Ira the following morning who's talking to Aurora. And Aurora is going on to state that she is to not be able to be there to be able to cook the chicken pepperoni. And she's writing out this whole note, and then she's forced to basically just read off this entire note, and she has to go to this doctor's note to get a feet escaped. So Ira then has to go on and re-explain this to Glenda, and Glenda's like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to just cook the chicken pepperoni, even though I don't know exactly how to cook this chicken pepperoni. So Ira then goes on to make his way to work, and he's talking, or he's gonna talk with Fred. But Ira is to try and figure out the possible recipe for chicken pepperoni and is to get these ingredients in this recipe. So both Ira and Fred are talking, and so Fred is to kind of get a break on the Nicholas case, and is to showcase photos of both Dex and BG here. So we'd have Ira that's like, okay, all right, well, uh, like this might be like a break in the case that we need. So Ira is to want to go on and return to Glenda while she's cooking to just kind of state uh, the already kind of thing that is to have gone on. So it seems that there is to be just kind of a lack of workers for the governor tonight. And so we're really coming to find that like Chester is to be the only one really kind of manning anything tonight. So, and they also probably have to be very much worried about the dogs. So, um, let me pause here for just a second. Okay, so the governor's party is getting together. So Chester and Ira are in the kitchen, and we're overhearing the doorbell ringing. And Ira's looking at Chester as like, well, hey, aren't you getting that? Aren't you going to get that? And Chester's like, well, no, I should be watching over the food. And but Ira is still like, well, hey, you should obviously get the door. So come to find out, the doorbell rings, and it's Fred, and I'm assuming his wife. So we'd have Fred going on and telling Ira that it seems that the governor is kind of shortly behind with this limo. So it's like, all right, like we're getting everything ready here. So Chester is going on and like looking at this wine bottle, and he's pouring, I think, a little bit into the food, but like he's consistently just kind of slugging away at this wine. So Glenda is to have been just so exhausted with all the cooking that she had gone on and done that she had decided to just kind of take this nap, and Ira is to just rush to wake her up and just kind of get her to just kind of throw some clothes on and meet with the governor. And when she meets up with the governor and just is to state that it's like, oh, I just kind of threw some stuff together. The governor is like, well, like that's you just kind of throwing things together. Like, good God, like just kind of doing some nice complimentary stuff. So the governor is going on and just kind of is talking to Fred here, just chatting him up. And so Nicholas is going on and just kind of scooting around this limo, kind of sneaking around. And so Nicholas is to start like climbing into a portion of this house, but then he starts to kind of just climb up uh this kind of ladderish like vine thing than any like planter person is going to have at their house. So he starts climbing up this thing. He ends up falling, hitting into this bush, and someone had gone on and spotted Nicholas. So Nicholas does go on and figure out a way to get into the house eventually and is talking to Chester. And Nicholas is going on and realizing that Chester is getting to be very, very drunk to the point where Chester is starting to go on and feel sick and is to eventually just kind of fall over. So we have the dinner proceedings going on, and they're assuming that they're going to get some chicken pepperoni here. I think even Glenda like asks like if the governor would want some more chicken pepperoni. It's like, well, I haven't had any. And then Glenda's like, oh well, yeah, like I think I meant the opposite about that question. Like, would you want some? So like it's all just kind of lost here. So we'd have Nicholas that goes out and is to start to hand out the chicken pepperoni. And the governor is to look at Nicholas like, you know what? There's something just familiar about you, son. I don't know what it is, but like, there's just something like in my brain that just kind of is to be firing off here. But Nicholas is just like, oh no, no, no. So Nicholas goes back in the back, and so Glenda makes her way to Nicholas. Is like I'll have them shoot you. I'll have them shoot you, Nick. So Nicholas is like, well, hey, there's nothing I can do, but hey, like Nicholas is wanting to hug on to Glenda and starting to reflect on their relationship and is to try and even go on and lock lips with Glenda at this point. So Nicholas is a state that he wants to go on and he wants to surrender as he's gone on to kiss Glenda as Chester is looking and just be like, all right. Like, so Glenda was to have left the kitchen stating that she needed some air, but instead she really just needed to talk to Nicholas. And then when she comes back, everybody's just kind of looking at her and they're just kind of assessing how she looks. And when Glenda is returned to Fred and just be like, well, how does Glenda look? And Nicholas is like, oh, she's fine. And Glenda just sinks. She's like, oh. so so like I've probably gotten a little bit ahead of myself at some point, but I'm just gonna keep going into this anyways. So uh so when Nicholas goes on to continue to just kind of serve our people here, Ira is to realize and Fred is to realize that this is Nicholas, and so they want to go into the kitchen and I'll have to leave for one reason or another and want to just have this fight going on because Fred is turning to Ira. It's like, well, hey, what should I do here? And the governor is like, well, what do you mean by that, Fred? And we of course have them coming up with a story like that Fred is a vegetarian and Ira is to go on and know like what Fred should really do with this meal. So but Ira goes on and is to go into the back and start fighting Nicholas. And Fred is to go on and also go back in there and just kind of see how this all plays out. So by the time Ira and Fred, it seems, are to return here, the governor is like, well, hey, should we have a second group go now? Because you all went. But it's like, well, no, yeah, no. So at some point, Nicholas does come back out to then talk to Ira, and is to say, it's like, well, like, sir, we need you for something. And Ira's like, well, are you sure that I need to have to be back out there? And Nicholas is like, yeah, it just can't wait. So they go back in the back, and Nicholas is to now punch Ira at this point, and the governor is asking, like, hey, what is really going on? It's like, well, yeah, they're all fighting. And the governor is like, well, like, you can see, like, why I'm the governor, because I keep my cool. So by the time that we are to realize that this situation is to all just be ruined at this point, Nicholas heads out to the kitchen, is just to eventually at some point just fall over. And so Glenda is to have confessed to the governor that Nicholas is going to have surrendered to Ira, and so we really just go on and turn around and have this court battle here. So both Glenda and Ira are the night before, like, mentioning how they really do love one another and how they would fight for one another, and they both, like, agree that, like, they are still, like, cementing that they're an item, that they're going to be together. So we go into this court battle, and really it's just a whole entire rundown of this entire film all over again, with this judge really just being this, like, audience member to this whole play out. And the further and further he's to, like, be hearing this story and recapping it and just be like, wait a minute, like, you had Nicholas going on and serving food to the governor? What was the food? Chicken pepperoni. Oh, wow, okay, yeah. Like, all right then. So, like, the judge is going on and realizing that he is to have needed to expel all of his energy within this one court case, because he's just shocked and just dumbfounded and just gasped by all the recounting that they're to have gone on and done. Because whenever we'd have the judge kind of state some kind of charge of some sort that Ira is to want to press charges on, we turn around and just have Glenda that's like, well, no, actually, like, this is how it was to play out. Like, I wasn't to have really had a gun being held on me because Nicholas told me there wasn't any bullets, and this and that. So, and almost having her be, like, close to being aiding and abetting, but it seemed that those charges won't ever, like, gone on to be pressed either. So out of all this stuff that is to have happened and recalled of the entire film, the judge is to finally just be like, you know what, how about we just throw everything out the window and really just focus on the robbery charge to just kind of finish up our day here. So we'd come to find that all of a sudden, like, the doors of this court is to just burst open, and Aurora is to come in with these two guys. And so Aurora is going on and confessing, like, her whole entire interaction with these men, where she was to try to make her way to this doctor's appointment to get her fetus scraped, and these two gringos had grabbed her and of course wanted her. So it seems that the dogs had wanted to save Aurora here. So the dogs are the real, true, legitimate heroes of this story compared to anybody else. So the dogs had attacked the guys. The guys then had turned around and gotten arrested. So we'd have Nicholas, who is to eye these two men as being the bank robbers, and at some point it's like, okay, well, case closed here, like, good enough. Luckily, at this point in time, just kind of, like, all of this is all done for. So we turn around and start to make our way out of this courtroom, and Ira's going on and telling Nicholas, like, he wants nothing ever to do with him ever again. Like, he's going to be checking his bed every single night. Like, and if he is to ever go on and see even, like, a pair of slippers that are just to be out of place in his home, like, he's gonna shoot first and try the slippers on later. So Nicholas is to go on and talk to Ira and is like, well, hey, like, you know what? Like, you're gonna take care of our girl, but, like, could I just get a minute alone with her? And Ira's like looking at Fred, is like, time him. So Nicholas goes on and is to talk to Glenda, and is to again, like, try and woo her, but it's not working. As Nicholas talks to Glenda, it's like, well, like, what if I changed? It's like, well, you wouldn't. What if I told you I tried? You couldn't. What if I just grabbed you right here and just kind of ran off? And Glenda's like, well, I would just turn around and run right back to Ira. Like, I love him. Like what we have is just, like, just not what I had with you. And this is that. So Nicholas goes on to ask Glenda, it's like, well, hey, like, you think I can get away with at least one last kiss? And so they turn to Ira, and it's like, well, Ira, will you allow it? And Ira is like the judge, where he's just like, 10. No. Uh, he's like, no, you're not going to kiss her. And Glenn is like, well, how about just a little one? And again, Ira is turning to Fred, it's like, time him. So Nick goes on and does this nice little kiss, then is to kind of go back in, do a little smooch, and Ira is just like, oh, and he's held back by Fred. It's like, I'm gonna punch him in the face again and have him get another black eye. Both of them ended up getting black eyes in this courtroom. It was hilarious. So I'm trying to figure out where all this ends. So after this moment, after Nicholas is to walk away, both Glenda and Ira are in their beds together. And Glenda comes up with the idea, it's like, you know what, like, I'm freaking exhausted. How about we go on and finally take that vacation that we've always ever wanted? Just kind of go out and just adventure somewhere. We don't know where we're going. Nobody knows where we're going. We're just out, and, like, there's no dogs. There's nothing to have to just deal with. And Ira's like, well, all right, this sounds like a plan. So they go off onto the open road, and so Ira's to turn to Glenn. It's like, well, yeah, like this road trip is to be so good, even we don't know where we're going. And so they're going on this road trip to all of a sudden find that there is to be a cow in the road. They end up swerving, and all of a sudden they're in just kind of this kind of car wreck. And Ira is to now have a broken leg, it seems. And Glenn is like, well, I'll go on and I'll go and I'll get help. So out of all the places that Glenda could have gone on and found help at, she ends up opening this door, and Nicholas is right there, and Glenda's like, ah, and that's how the movie just ends. So with that said, I'm going to try to get out of here because I realize that there's probably about 20 minutes in this film. There's a lot of good jokes that are probably quickly butcher the crap out of, or didn't really want it to get to the way it was perfectly placed. So like it's better off to just kind of recount this movie just by also clearly watching it as well. Because there's so many good lines here. There's so many good jokes. Just banger freaking film altogether. And I feel that there's a lot of actors just all working on this film that were just kind of in their prime anyways. But also, like, I think a lot of people probably say it's like, oh no, like this isn't the best like Goldie Hawn movie. This isn't the best Chevy Chase film. This isn't the best so and so movie, whatever. But I think it's pretty dang close, in all honesty. So with that said, I'm just gonna get the heck out of here so I can possibly go on and get either some rest or try my best to just kind of squeak one more uh, little thing into my day. Um, but either way, thank you for going on and watching this video for however you were to go on and really watch it for. I know you probably didn't stay to the end, but again, if you really did, I really do appreciate it. These videos probably haven't been the best that they should have been or could have been or would have been, but at least they've been there. And that's all that really probably matters, right? So, with that said, I hope to again continue to just keep putting out these videos and seeing where they go. I'm actually very much shocked about the consistent viewership, as well as also, well, yeah, consistent viewership. But then also, like, I'm looking at the stats of the YouTube stuff because I'm actually looking at those now. Um, Not as if to really just be like, oh, like let's figure out number to number basis like what I can use and whatever and strive that for the following things. I don't really care about that stuff. Like I'm just starting to like notice that there is to be like a female audience on my videos. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a female audience? Wait a minute, how did that happen? But like, no offense, like I would love it to have had both sides of the table to just come in and break bread. Um, but like there was just a long time where it was just like 90% a male audience, and I was hoping to eventually get more than that. And surprisingly or shockingly, I'm at that moment. Thank you for all of everybody, regardless of gender, checking these videos out. I really do appreciate it. Like for how much I go on and I consistently state I do not care. I do like I do really like want to justify continuing to do this. And that if that means care, then like I want to say that like there's stuff that I don't care about, but like there's also a care that I have that is in the right place, I hope. It sounds very bizarre to like just state like I don't care, but I also care. Like I don't care about all the garbagey numberish things that I feel like has to be forced upon me for how small this channel is. But also, when looking at a plethora of other channels, yeah, like, uh, I'm to also just be like, man, I'm lucky. Like, I actually have a library of videos to just kind of look back on. Um, and also, like, there are just certain channels where there is a massive struggle to just kind of figure out and put pieces together. And I feel that I'm at a point now where, uh, like, I've really started to have already like gotten a good massive like chunk of ideas for future projects, so I don't have to really go on and every day just being like, oh, what should I do? And I'll take hours trying to figure out what that is. Like instead, I'm having like 40 to 60 future projects being put in place, and I'm wanting to go on and hopefully get uh, a possible other side of things to get people to possibly talk about uh, what eventually they would want for the channel. But hey, um, really, like if people just want to leave it all up to me, then that's fine. That's that sucks. I want to get everybody's voice out there, um, and like really, if people are just like, man, no, like we just kind of want to see where this goes. Like we don't want to like have to uh, like askew where you're going because the variety that you're just kind of putting out is just kind of just very interesting. It's like, oh, okay, all right, well, I didn't know. Um, Regardless of how at some points I and honestly uh delivered and whatever. But anyways, it is what it is. We're here. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.